So welcome everyone to the Brooklyn 6G Summit, where value creation and AI are the two main themes. And I'm with the new dynamic duo at Nokia, CEO Justin Hotard, and the excitingly newly named Chief Technology and AI Officer Pallavi Mahajan.
Thank you.
Now, let's get them started by asking about what they think is interesting and exciting about 6G and AI. Let's start with Justin.
Well, thank you, Camille. It's great to be with you today. Let me just say, I think we probably set a bit of a marker last week with what we think is exciting about 6G, because ultimately it is going to be about AI and the AI supercycle, which I've been talking about now since the day I was announced, and why this is such a transformational opportunity for networks, and particularly for mobile networks. You know, we're seeing a lot of the demand today in data center build out and in inferencing and applications, but what's less talked about is how much of the early AI traffic is actually on mobile. And again, if you think about what we're seeing today, it's largely large language models. So it's video, audio, text, but largely on a large language model format. And what's going to change as we look ahead is the opportunity for AI to be a bridge between the physical and the digital world. We talk about things like digital twins, but also robotics, autonomous vehicles. And that's why when we look ahead, we realize that, you know, for networks to be valuable in this world, they need to actually be different. They need to be designed from the start with AI. And the work we're doing with NVIDIA, of course, the announcement we made around the investment from NVIDIA into Nokia, the partnership around building, an AI, a specific anyRAN baseband hardware using NVIDIA's Arc Pro, Aerial RAN Compute Pro product. That's really the start, because there's so much more we're going to be doing around defining these workloads, shaping them, and delivering a new type of network for the AI era. And that's why I'm thrilled that Ronnie from NVIDIA is actually going to be giving a keynote here in just a few minutes.
Great. Now, let's hear a little bit about what gets you excited about this dramatic and different combination about AI and 6G.
So Camille, you heard Justin talk about how he sees the AI supercycle. Let me just dial it down as to what we are seeing, as we see more and more AI native traffic. And what do I mean by AI native traffic? It is like, video-based inferencing. It is all the Gen AI, which is large language models, large video models. And now we are onto a phase of physical AI, where we are going to see more and more of autonomous cars. We're going to see more of drones. We are going to see more of robots. We are going to see more of these AR, VR glasses. And even with the trend that we are in, which is just about, the cusp of generative AI and physical AI, what we are seeing is that the network demands are very much changing. We used to see that downlink to uplink ratio was 12:1. What we are now seeing is it's close to 4:1, it's close to 3:1. We are seeing that the traffic is more and more getting burstious. And then at the same point of time, there is a lot of demand in terms of lower latency, because when you have glasses and you want to see and you want to get like instant inferencing results.
Have you got those glasses, by the way? I would love those AI glasses, personally.
I would love to invite you to my house where we have like a big AI lab, but that's something for another time. But this is where the demands of the network is changing. And if we keep on answering this question by just increasing capacity, that's not the answer, because at the end of it, spectrum is finite. It's like prime real estate. You cannot have more of it. And this is where we need to make sure that as our networks evolve, we bring intelligence into them. And that is what AI into networks is all about. And with the anyRAN partnership that Justin just talked about, we are bringing in more and more AI into networks.
Now, to that partnership. So you join on April 1st of 2025, and then suddenly in October, this amazing $1 billion investment from NVIDIA seems to have transformed everything. And in fact, you're saying that this is a fundamental re-architecting of telecommunications. Bit more on that.
Yeah, first of all, I think we're at the beginning of a journey. So I think it hasn't changed everything yet. But this is a company 160 years old, right? Most known for its history of connecting people, mobile phones, right? During what was really the telecommunications boom, 2G, right? It was a a handy phone. It was messaging, voice. We connected the world. And if you think about where we're headed in AI, in the future, we're going to be connecting intelligence, and that's the journey we're on. And Pallavi just summarized a number of examples of how we'll do that in real world and tangible applications and use cases. But this announcement is also, as I said, is the start. It's not the destination, it's the start. And it's part of a broader transformation as we get Nokia back to what it does best, which is building really compelling technologies, great products that encapsulate that technology, and then being a phenomenal partner out into the ecosystem. And this is one of those partnerships that, obviously knowing Jensen, knowing the team at NVIDIA, knowing their vision for leadership, and realizing that also for them, the next phase of progress will require this transformation in networks, this futuristic view into networks, and that what we've been doing as an industry in 3G, 4G, and 5G isn't going to be enough. We needed to build a true AI native stack. And in fact, if you look at where we've been in cloud, in our core networks, we've modernized cloud native stacks. We're now adding agentic AI into that. We've got APIs and extensibility, a whole bunch of things that are necessary for this future. But we needed the radio to take the next step. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing on the radio with anyRAN. And it's why it's such an important part of this whole journey, because otherwise we'll have these incredible data centers, these incredible use cases, incredible applications, but they won't connect to where the world actually needs them, which is the physical world that we all live and play in every day.
And let's agree, telecom is cool again, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it always was. But you've been also coining this term, Justin, the AI supercycle. So it sounded like bad weather to me, but it's something else, isn't it? So why don't you describe what that actually means?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, if you think about the internet, I'll use a little bit of history as an analogy. 1993, we start to see the early browsers. 95, you start to see applications. Feels a little bit 30 years later like what we're seeing with AI. But think about what came out of that we didn't appreciate. Early on, the internet was all about access to information. And it enabled information at your fingertips. Well, at your fingertips when you were sitting at your desk at a computer. It enabled commerce. I didn't physically have to go to a store anymore. I could order things online. And those were some of the early applications that everyone got excited about.
And that was the last supercycle.
That was the beginning of the last
The beginning of the last one.
But remember what came out of it. Then we had the mobile internet, the iPhone. The iPhone created mobile data services, apps. We didn't talk about apps before that. We talked about apps, but they were probably something you served before dinner, at least in the US. But we didn't talk about apps. We didn't talk about cloud computing. That was a concept we had never considered. In fact, the early days of the internet, it wasn't even conceived. It came out of the internet. And that's what I mean by a super cycle, where you have an innovation that spurs a sequence of parallel innovations that are all happening. And when you look at AI, there's so many parallels today. Large language models are the beginning, and we're providing access to intelligence. So internet was about information, AI is about intelligence. The second thing is, look at what's coming. We're talking about quantum computing. We're talking about autonomous vehicles, robotics, robust digital twins. All of these things are going to, and there's probably more that we haven't even realized yet, but all of these types of applications and use cases and new innovations will flow out of this innovative step. And that's why we see this as a much longer term thing. This isn't just a growth cycle like we saw in cloud. This is a much broader journey that we're on with AI. And I believe it'll be 2 or 3 decades long, much like what we saw with the internet supercycle.
Let me turn now to Pallavi and ask you about some of the important aspects of what you're doing in terms of how you're driving some of these, benefits and some of the core strategies that Nokia's had around AI and 6G. And one of them has been anyRAN, right? Which is all about ensuring flexibility across the cloud, as Justin was talking about, and hardware, bringing all that together.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about anyRAN and the benefits there?
I'm going to pick on what Justin was talking about because, as he was talking about the whole super cycle and the changes this industry has seen, one of the changes that we saw was what started from a compute side of things. You used to have Sun Solaris, you used to have HPE. It was a fully vertical stack, hardware, software integrated, and then there was this disruption. And what came up was, you could have different hardware, but the software on top of it was all Unix. And then what it actually enabled you to do was it pushed the innovation more towards the software stack. Mm-hmm. You could bring in new applications, virtualization happened, microservices happened, cloud native architecture happened, and all of that has enabled us to be where we are today. Now, this is, as Justin said, it's 20, 30 years later, but this is where we are from a RAN point of view. And what we have been doing, this is years of investment that we've spent in our anyRAN software. It started with being built for the AirScale platform, but we spent the time to go about and bring it single stack. It's one single software stack that today runs on AirScale and also runs on any general purpose COT server. And now with our anyRAN, with our AI RAN work, what we have done is we built in a hardware abstraction layer that just hides away the complexity of the silicon you're running in and now enables you to bring in an NVIDIA-like GPU.
And so just to be clear, the impact on the transition from 5G to 6G in a few words.
Simple. It's just a software update that you have. Mm-hmm. And this is what we truly call as a software-defined RAN, because you have the software installed, you have a new AI model that comes in, you have new energy efficiency that comes in through a software upgrade. A software upgrade takes you from 5G to 6G. It is as seamless, and that's the mission that we are on.
Okay, that's a very attractive vision for those of us who are going to invest in this, right? So let's talk about some other benefits that we're going to get from these AI native architectures, these types of technologies. Tell us a bit more. Make the sales pitch for the benefits for the CSPs first, the telcos, and then we'll move on to some of the others and the stakeholders.
Yeah, look, I think where we see connectivity going for this world is something that we talk about as making connectivity invisible, and that sounds kind of maybe it doesn't matter as much, but actually making it invisible is really critical, because what it means when it's invisible is it has to be always available. If you think about it today, how many of us we transit from outdoors to indoors, and we have to make a connection to our Wi-Fi. Probably many of our guests are on a Wi-Fi service today. So making it available, it's got to be performant. It's the bandwidth I need, right? I don't need the same bandwidth if I'm uploading video from my smart glasses in Pallavi's house to and I don't need the same bandwidth for that I do if I'm just sending a short message burst up from an autonomous vehicle reporting on an event that just happened. But what I do need is I need the right bandwidth. It needs to be trusted. I need to know that the information I'm sharing and the information I'm receiving is from the right source, and it needs to be secure. It can't be compromised anyway. That's what we mean by making it invisible. And if you look at what's happened in 4G and 5G, because the telecommunications industry was actually largely behind where the technology industry was, we were constantly playing catch up. This is an opportunity to leap ahead, because the industry has been building better voice networks when data services were being delivered. The industry was innovating in robust data services when applications were moving to robustness in mobile already. So the opportunity here is to look at this a little bit differently and say, how do we leap ahead? How do we enable these applications and use cases? And that's the shift. And actually, I think for operators, it's a phenomenal opportunity, because what happened in the past when we were playing catch up was most of that monetization moved out of the operator ecosystem. But again, if we think about going from connecting information to connecting intelligence, right? I keep bringing this back. By connecting intelligence in the AI supercycle, what we're doing is also providing new sources of monetization, because now the value of that token that's available, that's performant, with low latency and high bandwidth, that's trusted and secured, that should be at a premium, and that should create new revenue sources for our operators. And again, as Pallavi said, the flexibility of monetizing a lot of this through software. So you buy what you need when you need it, and you're not stuck into these large capital cycles that have traditionally been the burden of the industry, where we go through kind of a 5-year process, right? An initial investment and a mid generation upgrade. The ability to do this at a much more recurring manner, aligned to the demand that you're seeing, is also a great opportunity for operators. So we think it's a unique opportunity for operators to embrace AI. Start with 5G Advanced. Don't wait till 6G. Start with 5G Advanced, as Pallavi said. One of the reasons we worked so hard with NVIDIA around this solution, and it took us a few months from the original vision that Jensen and I had, was because we wanted to get the product right, the upgrade story right. And that's why you saw, T-Mobile, for example, a huge customer of AirScale, talking about the fact that it's an easy upgrade, getting the upgrade story right, so it's not another big capital investment. And that's really key. So getting started now, POCs early next year with, for us with customers that are interested, full deployment into 27, and then you can really lean in and be faster to 6G as those applications emerge.
And Kamal, to your question about, what does it mean for operators and the benefits? So let me actually dial it down with an example. For beamforming is one of the foundations for high-frequency wireless networks. What it essentially enables you to do is it enables you to focus radio signals like a spotlight, so that you can direct energy to focus set of users rather than broadcasting it generally. And today, for beamforming to happen, it's a very brute force scanning mechanism that we have, where the network keeps on probing, tens and hundreds of beams, and then selects whichever is the strongest. Now, there are a lot of problems with this. First of all, it's slow because it has to probe so many beams. The second problem with this is that it is bandwidth hungry. Every probe requires you to go about and invest in spectrum. The third problem with this is it is energy hungry, because you have so much of computation to do. Now, if you bring in AI into RAN, our researchers at Bell Labs, they've come up with AI-driven Bayesian optimization. What it does is that it enables the network to now predict where the best beam is going to be. With few probes, you understand, this is your signal landscape, the model updates, and then it starts predicting. Now, net, what we are seeing as part of it is faster beamforming. What it means is better customer experience. We are seeing less energy consumption, which means less OpEx for our operators. And we are seeing spectral efficiency, which again means less CapEx. So these are the benefits that operators get in terms of customer experience.
And I'm really glad you mentioned customer experience, because in the end, we've got to convince those end customers to pay for this technology, the consumers and the businesses. And it's not just connecting intelligence, it's enabling decisions that you're going to be able to do. So is that part of the value and growth opportunity that they benefit from?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the early use cases we're already demonstrating today is exactly this kind of application. And it builds on something that Pallavi was talking about earlier, which was latency. And so this is a case where we have an imaging system outside of a building, and it identifies something rogue. In this case, it's a drone. And what it's now assessing, from an algorithm is, okay, this is a rogue event. We've identified this as a drone. And then it actually moves the processing to the edge, and leveraging the GPU, not because we've built excess capacity, but because the GPU actually has the capability that's sitting in our baseband, and it processes and assesses it, and then determines, and in this case, in the example, it determines, okay, this isn't a threat, right? This actually is, it's a trusted drone, it's one of ours. So it identifies, it isolates, it makes the decision, and then goes back to providing detection around the area. But that's just one example of a monetization service, because that now creates a new platform for our CSP customers to then monetize that as a capability.
In public safety, in defense, in transportation, and some of these other sovereign industries. So let's put our future glasses on, I don't know, the crystal ball or whatever the connected device we'll be using, and let's look into the future, the next decade, if that's at all possible. And how do you think we can ensure as an industry that AI and compute and connectivity, we all work in concert together? Because right now we're running with a lot of different definitions for a number of different areas, right? Whether we're talking AI, whether we're talking maybe aspects of 6G. How do we work together better as an industry?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's events like this, coming together, sharing ideas, sharing perspectives. I think that's really important. I think we obviously have a great platform within this industry around 3GPP, but I also think we need to recognize that 3GPP and standards are a great enabler of interoperability, but they cannot be a constraint to innovation. And in fact, when we look at innovation and we look at whether it's what's happening in AI today, what's happened in areas like cloud computing, what's happened in the past in the internet, it's come because of ecosystems, and that's why ecosystem partnerships are so important. And that's why we're so thrilled to be partnering with NVIDIA, because what better ecosystem partner to launch anyRAN with, but also what better partner to be talking about end applications with. And it's going to be the combination of ecosystem technology partners, continued collaboration and co-innovation with our customers. That's why we're thrilled to have T-Mobile on board in this. And of course, as Pallavi said, AirScale, our solution, another great ecosystem partner in Dell, launching this with us as our standard server offer, our COTS server offer. Those are the kinds of ecosystems that move things forward, and not just ecosystems, but the people within these organizations collaborating, communicating, and making sure we have a way that we can accelerate innovation and provide platforms for access so that we can monetize these new services.
And indeed, that's one of the aspects of your role, of your new role, is it not? Building
Absolutely.
those ecosystems.
And Kamal, one of the things I would like to call out is, especially as 6G standards are evolving, we need to make sure that AI and 6G are not two parallel tracks. They have to converge. Because, these standards are going to enable us to define, how do you go about and deploy these models? Talking about models is one thing, but, everyday operational aspects as to, how do you detect model drifting? How do you go about and, do the fine tuning of the models? How do you go about and bring in new models? There has to be a standard around it, because that's what is going to go about and make sure that these technologies actually get adopted. Otherwise, it's going to be yet another operator challenge.
Absolutely. Well, all I can say now is thank you very much to Justin and Pallavi, who've done a fantastic job spending a few minutes of their time with us here at the Brooklyn 6G Summit. And now let's return back to the program.